And let me see, I'm writing to Kirsten Friday night. Okay, my mom's on too. Hello, Mom. Hi, everybody. I hope you're well. Pizza and beer tonight. Okay, I'm starting to get truly worried. Let me ask Kirsten, am I on? Classic moments of am I on? I'm going to sign on to chat too and ask you if I'm on. Won't let me do it. Interesting, huh? Okay, so again, if you can see me and you are, it's saying that I'm live and it's ticking us away here, 23 viewers. So I'm kind of waiting. Let me know if we are live. We have a terrible delay, but it is worrying. Can you see me, Mom? Okay. I am so sorry about that. Something is different. It's not just with this program. It's with a couple other programs this week. I turn them on and things are not the same. Okay. Welcome to Friday night, everybody. Happy cocktail night. Something strange happened. Dave, you're on. Pizza and beer tonight. Cheers, my dears. Okay, all good. Whew. I was starting to get worried because I'm not much of a problem solver when it comes to technology. So we are going to start the night looking at what was it, Sundays. It was last Sunday's Banana Split, which was a wonderful event at Whisrpering Hill, Donna's place in Woodstock, Connecticut. I want to show you some of the photos that came out of there. Thank you, Cheryl. Now I'm getting messages because I was frantically writing to people. When I don't bring my 8-year-old here with me, there's no chance of me solving problems on the computer. I need an 8-year-old in the room to be able to do some problem solving. I'm going to give you a puzzle, not a problem. It's a bit of trivia. Are you ready? Do you remember this song? This is the trivia question of the night. Don't Google it. Tell me if you remember who wrote this song. Sing along with me if you remember. This has got to be an 80s jingle. It went something like this. Something like, wait a minute. We're the Pepsi people, feeling free, feeling free. Do you remember that? It was like maybe 70s, 80s. And I wonder if you know who wrote that, because I do. It's one of my favorite people. I wonder if you do. That was like one of the big jingles of growing up. And I think we don't hear that one anymore. We have slightly cooler jingles now. Oh, times have changed. So let's travel. We got 2 places to travel to, Ohio and Connecticut tonight. So let's get going with that. Thank you, Jay. That was rough. That was rough. Let's first go to Donna's place. She is so much fun. She sends us a lot of tips that we cover often on cocktail night. Janice, good to see you. April, good to see you. Linda Ann, great to see you. And Lori. Things are looking better now. I was terribly worried. Let's go to Donna's place first, because a lot of good things came out of this visit. I always enjoy heading over there. There are so many good buddies over there. There are so many teachers in that group, Pearl McGowan certified teachers, so many knowledgeable people there to help with problems and problem solving and inspiration. So and Donna not being the least of them, of course. So let's head over to Donna's house and see what we can see. I think I started off with a picture of me and Donna because she's not a big photo person. And I said, come on, Donna, we never get a photo together. I always come in here and out of here. We never get a photo together. I take beautiful photos of your place, but not of you. And she said, do I have to smile? And I said, well, no, you don't have to. I think she looks adorable in this photo. I love this photo of us. This is Donna and I, and her place is called Whisrpering Hill. Teresa, you like that behind me. It's one of those stupid popcorn things, right, that are actually so pretty. Speaking of integration, speaking of inspiration, I'm not going to take a lot of detours early on, but I have to say, when I look at stuff like this, inspiration is everywhere, and you already know that, right? When I look at something like this, you see this hat, this popcorn hat on this crazy popcorn pumpkin? This came out of like one of these Goodwill, what are they called, outlets, like by the pound, so obviously something like this weighed nothing. That was a no-brainer. I got a bunch of these guys. But I put them here just to remind me that I am really enjoying working on my fall designs early this year, and I never do. But looking at those crazy colors melted into his hat band gave me so much inspiration. They were the inspiration for a whole piece that I'm working on right now. And it just goes to show Yes, Linda, it is Barry Manilow. How did you know that? That was excellent. He did the Pepsi song. He did Dr. Pepper. He did that one, and he did a bunch of them. I guess he was a jingles person first, right? And he was Bette Midler's piano player. But yeah, that was one of his great songs. He did a bunch of other soda songs, and even as a child, I thought, is that allowed to be writing like competing soda jingles for different soda brands? And I'm going to stop. But do you remember in those days, like in the 80s, going to something like a grocery store, and there would be a person there with a table and like cardboarded off, like, Coke and Pepsi bottles. And they would pour you a Coke and a Pepsi and ask you if you wanted to take the Pepsi challenge. Did you ever do that? Because as a kid, that is like the background of my whole growing up. Going places, anywhere, like the stationery store, the grocery store, Benetton, whatever, and hoping that the Pepsi challenge would be outside because you would get a free glass of Coke and Pepsi. And I liked them both. I think I like Coke more. But it was always fun. I just thought that was such a funny thing. Went to his concert in Tokyo. Kaz, is he popular in Tokyo? I've gone to see him all over the place. I mean, I just love him so much. And now it seems like he's only in Las Vegas. So there is a trip to Las Vegas, my first one. It's not one of my first choices of places to go, but I will go because Barry is there. That is so funny. That is so funny. Side jaunt, right? Okay, let's come back to business over here. Very easy to distract me, even when I'm not drinking cocktails. And you always pick the Coke. I mean, they're both good. They're kind of interchangeable, right? It was always a big who cares for me, but it was funny. It was a funny chance to get some free drinksies. Now, I wanted to show you some of the stuff that she has in her shop because I am always talking about her shop as this giant Aladdin's cave, and it really is. It's the first floor of her house, and it is loaded with these beautiful sort of apothecary drawers. I mean, lots. And they open up to beautiful things that you can buy. Everything there is for sale. She has got some real treasures like some Grenfell rugs. She has got books and collectible stuff everywhere. And I've taken pictures of lots of it because I'm just dazzled and awed by the amount of stuff. Oh, he was very popular in the 80s. I'm glad to hear that. I still love him so much. I pulled out a drawer of one of her little cabinets, like an old spool cabinet, and this was inside it. And I went, oh my God, that's a Grenfell mat. So she's got the right price on it. I think I have a picture of it that's even, and that's a Grenfell brochure written by Grenfell. She's got a lot of stuff that isn't immediately rug related, but obviously Grenfell mats, Grenfell rugs, but not all of the literature that he put out in the sort of propaganda was about rug making, right? That was just a part of the business. So she's got things like this that for a Grenfell collector, you'd want, if you're a completist, you would want the whole thing. But this is the rug, and I moved the price aside because she lets you touch stuff. I was very careful. I didn't have a Pepsi can in my hand when I did this. But beautiful silk stocking mat made with silk stockings, right? Beautiful fine stitches because of the material. Absolutely beautiful. So nice square piece. $500 is the right price. And because this is like the blue nose, this is a good subject. Not all of them are great subjects. The beating of the walrus is not so great, but something like this, a very safe subject. So she's got this one, and she's also got this one. I think this is maybe 600. It's a little bit more, but of course this is an even better subject. The changing of the hues in the background is remarkable. Even the two evergreen trees, remarkable. The dog in his harness, great subject. I mean, this would appeal to people who collect stuff that relates to Canada, to Grenfell, to Nova Scotia, to dogs, right? I mean, there's a lot of crossovers here where collectors would really want a piece like this. She does not sell online. Donna does not have an online store. So it's so nice to go in there and to be able to kind of pour through her stuff. Check it out. This is another one of these things with Grenfell on the Labrador. So I said to her, is there any mention of this is for sale, and it wasn't a lot. It was like 15 or something. I said, is there any mention of the rugs in this book? And she said, no. It's just one of those side things that if you fall in love with the story of the Grenfell rugs, this would be something that you would certainly want to be looking for and that you would want to read cover to cover, because if it sort of captured your heart, the whole story of the medical mission and of the rugs, then you would want to know everything that you could about this man and the people who surrounded him. So it's all interesting. Whitney says, Pepsi to me tastes flat and less carbonated. I drink Coke Zero and Dr. Pepper Zero. Oh, interesting. I haven't tried either of those. That's interesting. Loved your arcade video. Oh, Whitney, thank you. Yesterday, I went to my mom's for the last couple of nights. I wish I put one of the videos in. This is the story of a holy grail, and I think we'll all be able to relate to this. But my kids are going back to school on Tuesday. And tomorrow we're going into New York City. So the last couple nights we're at my mom's, kind of living it up until the teachers and the school system has their hands on the kids, and that's it until next year. So we're trying to do some fun stuff, and one of the things that my son Teddy, who is autistic and he's very, very focused on video games, and computers in general, but retro video games, and he has become absolutely obsessed with these particular kinds of claw machines called UFOs that come from Japan, Kaz. They're from Japan, and they are like scarce as hen's teeth in this country because they are giant machines. The claw part of them looks like a UFO. That's what it looks like, a flying saucer with arms that go underneath it. It's not the traditional claw. So, I mean, I've been researching where these machines could be in this country, and the closest I found them was Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I'm in New Haven, Connecticut. So I thought, I guess we have a road trip on the horizon. We're going to have to head out to Pittsburgh. And then Jay actually found out that there was possibly a machine, a UFO, in Holyoke, Mass, which is north of my mom and very close to her. And I thought, oh my God, let's check. We've got to check that out before school starts. It was like a long shot, because it was just like a rumor that it was there. We went into the arcade. It was called Round One. It was in the Holyoke Mall. And I could just, it was just like, I didn't care one way or the other. I cared for them that these machines were there because this was a Holy Grail thing. But I was flooded with that feeling of when you find something, a real Holy Grail thing, and how it fills you with that crazy happiness. As soon as we walked in, there were honestly 20 or 30 UFO machines. I was thinking one, and I was thinking with our luck, it'll be out of order. 20 or 30 of them. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was the biggest arcade I've ever seen. It was like Las Vegas for kids. These UFO machines were all over the place. Teddy immediately put his card through and he won this giant Hello Kitty. I mean, it was just crazy. It was such a happy time. And I thought, man, if you could bottle these moments, how you feel when these great things happen, you would never be unhappy again. You would never frown again, right? It doesn't work that way. But it was super exciting. Ryan, happy Friday. You've got your hard seltzer poolside this evening. Oh, now you're just bragging. That is crazy. You are poolside with a hard cider. That sounds absolutely like heaven. I don't know much about games, but yeah, ask your grandsons, Kaz. They do a lot of stuff too. I'm going to stop it. It's interesting how in Japan, I have learned through the kids that they do a lot of video games with these claw machines virtually. For people, like most people are nowhere near these UFO machines, so it's a thing, right? But if you win one on the virtual game, apparently they send you the plush toy in the mail. I mean, I find that remarkable, the expense of that, and there's a lot of goodwill involved because you assume they will. And I guess you don't hold your breath, but if they did, that would be remarkable. But man, it was such a fun day. Thank you, Whitney. I love to see the kids that happy. It makes me feel like I'm doing something right, So looking at this Grenfell book, and then I was kind of cruising through her area, looking at stuff like this. She has got so much stuff hanging. I think I told you this before, that she went on kind of a bell pull bender during COVID because she really has no more room on her walls, on the sides of her bookcases, on her floor, on her benches and chairs. And she started to do bell pulls because of their size. That made a bit more sense. But isn't this a beautiful piece? I don't know this piece. This looks to me more like a Rickenbacker than like a Pearl McGowan piece. And it could be an antique piece. It's not necessarily one that she hooked. It actually looks older than something she would hook. Remarkable stuff. And then books all over the place to really get you inspired. And then I stopped over near my buddy Brenda, who was working on another. She did one of the fairy tale, the Pearl McGowan fairy tale show. She did one of the fairy tale rugs, and she's working on a second one. So let's walk through this because this was a really remarkable piece that I stumbled upon. It's such a pleasure and a happiness to be in settings like this where you can be around, meet some new friends, meet some people that you've met before, see what they're working on. And again, I'm going to make a plug for the organization ATHA, Association of Traditional Rug Cooking Artists. Or, maybe you have an ATHA group near you, or maybe you have a group of rug cookers who are not associated with ATHA, but it is just priceless to be able to sit in a room with other people who are working on rugs. Whether you have a heartfelt connection to every single one of them, who cares? The thing is, you're there. You learn a bunch of things from them and vice versa. The energy is great. You answer your own questions, you look at things, you feel inspired, you feel connected. It's a wonderful thing to be able to find a group. So look at ATHA, ATHA, if you're new, and see if they have a chapter near you. It's very inexpensive to join, and it is such a gift to be able to connect with people in person and to be able to hear lectures and speakers coming through talking about new books, new techniques, new ideas. It's all exciting. It's for us, right? This is what's for us. We don't have a lot of groups to get together as rug hookers anymore, but ATHA is certainly one to look for. Sure thing. I should plug more often. I really should. I'm such a skunk. I need to put up some Post-it notes for myself. So Brenda was working on this piece, and I'm going to bring you in closer to it. This is the paper piece. Now, what she did, if you remember this fairy tale challenge, what she did was she found an image that she liked. Now, again, the challenge is over, so she's just doing an extra one because she enjoyed the first one so much. She found an image. This is an Arthur Rackham image, if you're familiar with the Victorian illustrator, very famous sort of Gothic illustrator called Arthur Rackham. His life is something like, I say Victorian. He was born in the 19th century, but I think he died something like 1939, I think, something like that. But I'm going to show you some images of his at the end because he was a remarkable artist. Most, possibly all of the images that were used for this fairy tale challenge were taken from books that would be copyright free because of the age. Now, I've said this before, you do always have to check if you're doing something commercial with it because there are exceptions, like Arthur Rackham did Alice in Wonderland, and now you'd be treading very close to Disney because they also did Alice in Wonderland. But most things don't work that way. If you're crossing over to something that Disney has ever touched, just abort mission, because unless you're doing it for yourself and it's going up on your wall and you're not posting thousands of pictures on Facebook or making your own copies to sell, then you're good, right? That we say that amongst ourselves, then we're good. But the only reason why that would be the exception is because Disney's Alice in Wonderland illustrations look exactly like the original illustrations. They didn't deviate that far at all from the original look. And for that reason, they can always argue in court that you copied their illustrations and not the book illustrations. It would be a tough one on both sides, right, to prove that you didn't because they're so similar. But who wants to mess around with Disney? So there are so many other illustrators from the golden age of illustration, which is late 19th century, early 20th century, like Arthur Rackham, who did beautiful work. Brenda liked this one, and so she took the image to Staples, or the equivalent of, and they blew it up on this one piece. So this is not taped together in a pig's breakfast of Scotch tape and ripped paper. This is one sheet of fairly thick paper that they can do. Places like Staples or a print store can blow up an image like this. And then whatever your favorite transfer method is, you start tracing it onto your backing. And that's what she did here. I think that she does the fiber tape. I think most of the people who go to Donna's, they are fiber tape people. There are different camps of people in different places. It's sometimes geographic, right? What people like to do, whether it's the red dot or using tulle, the fabric tulle or whatever. But I know Donna uses the fiber tape, and I'm thinking Brenda might too. In any case, she got a beautiful, crisp, clear image of an illustration that is quite tricky, right? Very tricky. You know, I have to say, looking at this program, they really surprised me at the beginning of the program with a little bit of a change they did, but overall, I see other changes that are positive, that are going to make our shows a bit more seamless. Now, this is a close-up of the same piece, right? There are a couple of witches up in the tree. I mean, are you kidding me right here? This is so good. Look at these crazy feet. They look almost webbed, right, in the hands. Creepy peepees, like the colors on the face. And then the second one that she's just started, and she's saying, I don't know if I like the color of the witches. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? This is so good. I don't know if you can tell on your image because yours is larger than mine, but the cat is like a patterned wool, right? So he has a bit of a texture to him. Look at the tilt of his head. Now that's Arthur Rackham, but look at the way she's articulated the neck, the eyes, those bright eyes, piercing, right? Curious and piercing, not threatening, but it's a bit benign, right? All of these witches are a bit benign. They look small. Those teeth. I mean, it's just a crazy image, isn't it? I just fell in love with this. And she's been working away. This is a close-up of a different part of that same piece, right? So she just started it when we were there the other day. But you can see how fine these lines are. Arthur Rackham, he is definitely one that you want to know. This is one of Arthur Rackham's original illustrations. So he did a lot of illustrating for books, magazines, but mostly books. And things like this, very whimsical. He does a lot with organic forms like trees and bushes and branches and woodsy scenes. But this is very signature, like the one that Brenda is working on. I think this one's called The Man in the Wilderness. This was a 1913 book. Right? This is the same sort of era as like a little bit later than the Alice in Wonderlands, but like the Wizard of Oz series, right? That huge long series. This kind of fantasy, other world, super, super fantastical, literally, right? And this is another illustration by Rackham. I think this is Sleepy Hollow. If you can see the guy in the middle, the rider on that skinny, bony horse has a pumpkin head. And there's lots of goblins kind of attaching to him. So this is the legend of Sleepy Hollow. This would be different than the versions that we've seen on TV and all of that. But interesting, isn't it? It's interesting. In any case, my point in showing you these images is that you might be interested in doing something along the lines of Arthur Rackham, right? A challenge. A heck of a challenge. Doreen, good to see you. She's doing it with wool. She's doing it with like number 3s. It's super fine. Sorry, I didn't see those comments. It's super fine. It's 3s, maybe a few 4s, but it's mostly very narrow cuts. This is another beautiful piece my buddy Nancy was working on. This is so large. You're going to say how large? It's enormous. I mean, it's a very large, like it would be a very large rug. It is just beautiful. She's working the left side of it. I know the details, Linda, are crazy. She was working on this, and her friend Mary, who was also there with us, I'll show you a photo in a minute, drew this onto the backing for her. This is just, I was so blown away by this piece because it is so colorful. It is so charming. I love the sort of montage quality of it. I love the pull, that grounding pull of the directional hooking that's bringing the dirt side to side horizontally. It is so stable. It is so lush and rich. It looks moist and fertile. It is just beautiful. And here are these rabbits frolicking right behind the, she said it was like one rabbit kind of hiding behind in some and eating it kind of like eating the lettuce head, kind of like the, what is it, Eric Carle, Hungry Caterpillar idea. And around the edge, and you can see some of it's cut off because it's folded over while she's working on it, around the edge is kind of a vignette. It reminds me of a Norman Rockwell type vignette, right? The picture that we've looked at on past shows, a portrait of Mary, his wife, and it was just the picture of the chair in the garden shed with the gardening hat and gloves on it and some fresh flowers that had just been picked, right? It reminds me of that kind of thing. This frame is so lovely. Green cabbages. Yep, you're right, the green cabbages. I love cabbages. Keith Fassett, right? He loves his cabbages. But they're so decorative. They're so beautiful. They're so accessible and familiar. Very Rockwell. Yep, totally Ryan. I love there's some packets around the edge and some that we're not seeing hooked yet, but like the beets, so cool. Some gardening tools, some fruits and flowers. It's just a beautiful composition. I took some close-ups of it too. This is one of the sort of beet or radish packets, something like that. I'm not good with my vegetables. I need to eat more of them. But you can see in the background, I think I have this upside down. I'm sorry about that. You can see the color change, and that's part of the reason that the soil looks so rich and colorful. It is rich. It's rich colors. It's warm browns. It's these vibrant, deep greens and eggplant colors, aubergine, right? All of this dark maroon family, really beautiful, clear gritting, absolutely. Kay says the motifs show up so strongly because of the way the background is hooked. Absolutely. Isn't that the truth? Let's look at the larger picture again. That is it. And we say this sometimes, it's worth repeating over and over. This is a busy composition. And how can you pull off this busy of a composition? Because you see there's more cut off. There's more bunnies, there's more cabbage, there's more motifs, framed motifs. How do you pull off something this busy? Well, you have to be sure that your composition is stable. One of the ways of making a stable composition is to really ground it with a background that is easy to see, easy to read, and there to unify all of the other elements. That is how you do it, baby. This is an easy sort of, I don't want to use the word hack like it's easy, but pulling in this colorful, rich, sort of tonal directional hooking is going to connect all of these other elements, and you will be safe in putting lots of details around it. Don't you love seeing the way people draw things onto the canvas? Mary is so good, right? Nancy's hooking it. Mary drew it onto the canvas. I just did a few close-ups because I can't freehand like this. I'm not this good, but I think it's just remarkable. I just loved seeing these packets. It reminded me of the seasons. It reminded me of old times. It reminded me of all the people who do canning and planting, and it's just charming. This is the part that we have yet to see with the watering can and the other bunny. He looks like he's having a bit of a picnic there in that last cabbage. But you can see this is going to come together in a phenomenal way. I took one more picture of it. When I took this picture, I took it out to Donna's sort of greenhouse room. It's like part outside, part inside, right? It's roofed and everything. But the sunlight is fantastic in there because inside it looked like a lovely rug, but outside it looked like a museum piece. It was so, the colors really popped outside. Susie, good to see you. And I'm so glad that I brought it outside. You see even the blue popping. I mean, it's just remarkable, isn't it? It's a beautiful piece. I got so excited when I saw that. Here is Nancy on the right who's hooking it, and this is Mary on the left who drew the pattern, who drew the picture onto the backing. So they both had a huge hand in this, and this is a big to be continued as we wait and see how it finishes up. You know, I forgot to ask Mary on the left. You see Mary's frame on the bottom left-hand corner? She has a frame with teeth on it, but you see how she put those T-pins into it? Does anybody else do that? Because I never saw that before. And when I noticed it, she was talking and I didn't want to interrupt, and then I forgot. And I wished that I had gone back and said, Mary, why do you, how are you doing that? Like, are you just trying to catch all your teeth because the teeth are slightly angled with these T-pins? I've just never seen this before. I thought that is so different, and I wondered if any of you had done this before or had seen other people doing this. I wondered exactly what you're doing when you're using T-pins to hold your piece in place on your frame. So big question mark there in my head. This is just a sort of incidental shot that I took because everywhere in Donna's place is unreal. It's just unreal. There's stuff to see everywhere, and although I've been there many times, I still turn corners and I see something like this and I think, it just takes my breath away. You know, that's a needlepoint of the kitties on the left, but the rest of the stuff is hooked. And it's just layers, layers of beauty, layers of color, layers of dreams and thoughts and images that take you to other places. It's just remarkable. Karen, your grandmother did that with the T-pins. Now, did she pin them right onto the combs? Or is she, because I can tell by Mary's, they're not like digging into the wool. It's not like a thumbtack job. Did she pin them just right between the combs and they stayed? Because I would think they would pop right back up. Having a soda break here. Join the Pepsi people. You're all having better things than Pepsi's, I think. Just to make sure it stayed. Oh, I see what you mean. So maybe what she's doing is putting it around the combs and utilizing the combs, but also adding the T-pins. For those of you that don't know T-pins, they're just some metal pins. You can get them at any craft store that are like the letter T. It's like a little fold that comes down. I use them for like braiding an Amish toothbrush, but I have not used them for hooking. So maybe this is another thing to think about. Teresa says, love the kitty's pillow. I do too. I love to see needlepoint mixed in with hooking. Now, Carol, this is the piece that you are working on. I met Carol for the first time, and I have to say, I was a bit of a geek because I loved Carol's piece that she was working on so much. Carol loves to work in the primitive style, and you know I do too. That's my special area of interest. I love rugs that look old and antique, employing all of the old methods and thought, right? And this is certainly one of them. This is a copy of an antique whale rug. And I just thought that this was remarkable because Carol is emulating in this rug, you know, when you get something like a black whale in a 19th century rug, they're going to have pieced together a lot of different blacks from a lot of different items of clothing. And in doing that, over the years, right, over the centuries, the colors will fade at different times in different ways. Some of them will turn to purple, some of them will completely lose their color. And I'm guessing that the original rug, which we'll see at the end of this series, was all black. I'm guessing the whale was all black, but had turned and mellowed into these different colors. It's a curious thing. Early aniline dyes, right? Early chemicals. So Carol is hooking this rug in the way that it looks now. And I think that's so interesting because it is the ultimate homage. It is the ultimate hat tip to the old days. When you hook something with those color changes over the years, you end up with a piece that really looks like an antique. What a joy. What a joy. And you know, what a thing to honor the original piece that way. Of course, nobody knows, but who knows? Maybe somebody's looking down and maybe somebody does know. I was looking at Carol's piece for a long time because it's made up of so many different colors, so many different materials. This little sort of triangle of color is a tweed, right? It is a patterned wool. And you can see how much, this is part of the whale's body, how much the overall piece will benefit from all of these sort of color changes. Interesting. Look at all the wools that are in here. I learned so much from the way that she was hooking it, and she had learned from the teacher Jeannie Benjamin. So, you know, this is how we gather information, collect information, hearing tips that have been given even through the telephone game down the grapevine, hearing other people's tips. That's everything, isn't it? That's gold. So looking at this piece and looking how Carol was taught to hook it gives me so much inspiration and new ideas, right? I'm looking at the amount of color that's in here. And I know that Jeannie Benjamin does a lot with dyeing and over dyeing, right? She does beautiful work. And some of these pieces of wool do look over dyed to me. There's a lot of pastel cast on some of these, some of them going toward the blue family, but you can see how much color change there is in this water and how well it's working with a thick cut like this. This is working so well. I could make this piece my, what is it called? My desktop every time I open the computer and just stare at these loops. And this goes back to that conversation we were having on a past coffee time, talking about when you want to get something that looks choppy, you do what Carol's doing here, right? You do what Jeannie told Carol to do, which is to only loop, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 8 in a series of one strip and then change. That's how you get an overall, let me come back to the first one, choppy look like this. That is very antique. And of course it is, because back in those days, you would not have unlimited amounts of anything, right? So you would be using every little scrap up. If that little scrap only got you 5 loops in a row, you'd say, I'll take it. You know, don't get sad, get glad, right? How many commercials can I reference in one evening? But I just think this is a remarkable piece. I love seeing antique pieces like this recreated. The texture, the patterning in the clothing, right? Looks like black watch shirts, like lumberjack shirts of the men on the small boat, right? They've come down off the whale boat. They've spotted a whale. They've lowered the small boat. They are rowing to the whale. They're probably going to try to harpoon it and go on what is called or known as the Nantucket sleigh ride, because as soon as that harpoon hits that whale, he's going to take off, and they're going to hope that he does not go underwater, because then they're in big trouble. But if he just takes off sort of horrifically limping for a ways, they will bounce along those waves and throw more stuff at him to try to get him to stop, and then they'll have to row his carcass back to the big boat. I do not envy the life of the former whalers. This is another glimpse of the corner of this rug that Carol is working on. And again, take a look at the way that this is hooked, because if you are longing to do this kind of a look in your sort of antique piece, where you want a lot of choppiness, you do not want the marble cake, you do not want the long shots, you do not want directional hooking, you want things to be pieced out into puzzle pieces and pieced small bits by small bits, right? You do not want overall flow, then you need to hook in this style, and this is the answer. So it's interesting to look at a rug like that. While we were looking at that rug, Donna came over and she said, I like the way you're hooking the water, but I would teach you how to hook it differently. And this comes right back to our conversation on how every teacher is different. Every teacher has value, and I don't just mean teacher. Let's replace the word teacher with hooker. Whether this is your first rug or you've been hooking for 50 years, if you have been hooking, you have experience, and your experience has value. Because, I mean, the people who start doing the higgledy-piggledy style, I can't get back to that to save my life. I did it when I started. I out-trained myself, and now I can't get back, right? There is so much value even in being, I'm going to take out the word even. There is so much value in being a beginner hooker. Everybody that is hooked 1 or more loops has something to say and something to share and something to give. And that's why it's so important when we look at work. You know, Donna says, I love the way that looks. I do it differently. And then she showed us this rug. So I went in the other room and I took a picture. This is down under some of her furniture. I just took a crop of it. But you can see the water is much busier and more active in this piece. The Nantucket sleigh ride has gone awry, right? The whale has gone underwater. People are flying off of boats. Boats are going underwater. Probably the next thing is a Titanic-style whirlpool, and it's not good, is it? So very different scene. This is a much more active scene, isn't it? This is a moment of turmoil as opposed to the one that Carol's working on, where they're still rowing and the whale is intact and seems to be, still quite cheerful. This is a different moment. So this water is much more active. It's very frothy. And the way that Donna has hooked it is by using long strips of, for directional hooking. She's hooking waves and she's going all the way across with the white for the foam or the blue, but she's getting long shots in to create continued waves. We've got a very busy, bouncy surf, and it has a strong horizontal pull, right? That's part of the story, is the condition of the water. And the attitude of the water is it's wild and crazy, right? So this is very different, but it just goes to show when you're working on a piece and you're thinking, how do I hook the water? There's not going to be two ways. There's going to be hundreds of ways, more than hundreds of ways. Let me see if there's one more. Oh, so this is the original rug that Carol was working on. Absolutely beautiful, right, Susie? This is the rug that she is doing a copy of. This is an antique rug. And you can see it's very similar. Let me come back to hers. Ooh, wait a minute. Is this going to be it? Nope, even one more. Hang on, I got to scroll a little bit further. There we go. I have to say I like Carol's a lot better. It's a great thing to do sort of an honor an older rug that way. I have to say I was a super geek, Carol. I know it, because I meet a lot of people, but I don't meet a lot of people who live close to me. And when we were talking about this rug and I was meeting Carol and stuff, I did this stupid thing that I do where I'm like, oh, I never know what to say to make friends anymore, right? Do you ever have this problem? When I meet someone I really like and I'm like, Carol, I really like you. Like, I hope that we can maybe get together and do some stuff together because we live near each other. And then I was thinking, God, that was so, like, you just don't say things like, and I thought maybe that was a creepy thing to say. Carol, I hope it wasn't. I really liked you. And I thought, oh, I'd like to do some stuff with you. I just don't know how to say that anymore. As a 50-year-old, it's hard to meet someone and go, oh, I really like you. You want to be cool still, I guess. And I don't have much of that left in me. But Carol, I love your work. And I really liked meeting you. And I hope we can do stuff together if I'm not too creepy, because we live pretty close together. Now, we're about to switch over to, hang on, I'm going to be the Pepsi people for 1 second. So good. All it needs is a little bit of rum, right? We're going to switch over to the Sauder show again. So we're going to go back and look at some of the rugs that are hanging at the Sauder show. Let's take a quick time out and talk about a very big overarching idea when it comes to rug hooking. Because I have heard, and I know we often talk about in our groups and on our forums, right, on our Facebook groups and all of this, it can be so intimidating looking at rugs from Sauder Village. I mean, these are the creme de la creme, right? These are people who are super talented and have been hooking for a long time right? These are glorious rugs. It's important to not be intimidated because when you think about it, and this is so important to remember, if there's one takeaway from the show, I hope that it's this sentiment, and I'm going to be very careful and diplomatic in the way that I communicate this thought. When I think about all the different schools of rug hooking, and I'm not going to start, right, because I can do like a week on just this subject. There are the very highly trained schools that do a lot with realism, very specific moment in rug hooking, very beautiful. And if that's your ideal, that's what you strive for. And you take classes and you learn and you move in that direction to move toward the thing that you strive for. There are other schools of hooking that are the more primitive, more antique-looking rugs, more folk art rugs, right? The early stuff, a lot of people like to emulate that stuff. I'm one of them. I'm not a big fan of the realistic stuff. I love the folky stuff, right? I can't stop making stuff like this that my kids design. That's where my heart is. We all like different things, right? And the style that you hook in has no relationship at all to your talent. You hook in the style that you like, and if you feel that you would like to improve, then you work in that direction. But no one ever gets to say to you, this is better than this or this is better than that. I have to give out ribbons at the Big E next month because I'm judging the rug division. But it is what it is. I will look for technical things, and I will be hugely influenced by my heart and by the things that I like too, right? But I will be super objective because I know what I like, and I realize I like something real specific, but I can't appreciate beauty and talent in all styles. When you think about it, rug hookers are coming from very different places. And I don't just mean in terms of style and training, but I mean when you think about it, there are, and think of a bunch of rug hookers as I say this, who are on a kind of gallery circuit. And you don't see them doing a lot of how-to books. You don't see them doing a lot of teaching. You see their work hanging up in galleries, and it has a big price tag, and they are rug hookers too. That is one branch of our big family of rug hookers. That is different than what I do. I love teaching. I never finish pieces. I don't put stuff up in galleries. I want to be here with you doing shows and talking about history, looking at each other's work. I'm not interested in galleries at all, but other people are. And it doesn't make anybody better than anybody else. So I want to try to eliminate this idea of like, oh, I'm so in awe of that. I could never hook like that, right? You have to compare yourself to yourself, just like I do, right? I keep trying to get to be the weight that I was before, before COVID, and it's hard. But I'm not comparing myself to Christy Brinkley, right? I'm definitely not doing that. So always compare yourself to yourself. Don't be intimidated because you see things that are beautiful. If that's what you like, and there's a specific thing about something that you're about to see that you say, I would love to do that specific thing, then work on that specific thing. Don't choose teachers. Don't sign up for classes that are super expensive, that are this, that, or the other bells and whistles, because you think that person has some magical secret. That person is going to tell you how they hook. So make sure that if you are trying to hook in a different way or gather more experience or information, make sure that you choose a teacher, whether they are certified or not. I am not, right? I guess I wish I was. I wish I was a lot of things. I wish I was Christy Brinkley too. I wish I had been married to Billy Joel. I really do. I wish a lot of things. But make sure that you sign up with a teacher whose work you love, because the only things that they're going to be able to teach you are the things that they do. So that is the only thing that matters, right? You try to align yourself with other people, whether they're teachers or not, who you like their work, and like stand over their shoulder like I did all creepy with Carol to look at what she's doing and try to figure out how she's working, because I haven't done that kind of a background yet. And I thought, oh, look at, you're doing the puzzle pieces. I've heard of that, but I don't know that. I don't do that myself. Maybe I'll give it a try now because I'm looking at you doing it. It seems a bit more approachable. We have to keep all this in mind, right? Because we are not down here and other people up here. That's not how it works. You work on the projects that you like, and they will be Sauder Village worthy. There's no question about that. You do them the way that you love them, and I can guarantee you other people will love them too, right? It's not good, better, best. It's not that ever. As a somewhat newbie self-taught puncher, it can be intimidating to see some of the fantastic pieces. We have to remember rug hooking is an art, and all art is subjective. It's also, I also like to say it's also a craft, right? It's something we do with our hands. It's something tactile. We're making fiber art. We're making our own version of a tapestry. I never get too sort of highfalutin with it. Even when I do pieces like for the book I'm working on now that I consider more serious pieces for me, still not highfalutin, still not on my high horse. They ain't that good, but I like them, right? And maybe somebody else likes them too. If it makes you happy, you're doing it right. That's the answer for everything in life, right? Put that on your, I was gonna say put it on your tombstone, but that's a bit depressing for a Friday night, isn't it? Yeah, that's it. This is why rug hooking is so inclusive. We all enjoy different styles. There are so many different kinds of rugs. Absolutely, Karen. This is it. This is it. So with that in mind, these are beautiful rugs, but so are yours, right? So are yours, and so are the rugs that you're going to make in 2023. Unless you take a year off to watch and gather and learn, right? And then who cares? You'll come to it when you feel like it. When it's the right time, you'll be there. Let's come over to where we left off at Sauder Village, and let's walk through together. Karen, I'm still looking at the pictures that you sent, and I cannot thank you enough. I'm sure we all cannot thank you enough for taking these pictures. Kay says, rug hooking releases my stress. I enjoy how relaxing it is. Absolutely, that's it. That is it. You know, I'm so happy whenever I hear about sort of rug competitions where there are no longer sort of rules about showing the back, the reverse of your piece, stuff like that. I just, yeah, I feel like there should be competitions, right? People should compete. People should admire each other's work and aspire to each other's work. But it should never result in you feeling like your piece is not as good or worthy of being in the same setting as other pieces. That is not the eventuality. That is not the follow-through thought by any means. April says, I'm taking a workshop with Donna Harkman for the 4th year in a row. Her work inspires me. There you go. She does so, I mean, she's so technical. She does so much of that steampunky stuff and so much with the monotone, like monochromatic and duochromatic rugs. That is so good to have. And if you love her work, you want to hook in her style. So that's a match made in heaven, right? That's exactly what you want to do. Linda Ann says, I love that we all have our own styles and ideas because it really would be boring if we were all the same. It absolutely would. And it's so heartening to see so many people doing their own designing now. Oh my God, I forgot to put up the Designing Like Grandma Moses class. That's the one that's coming up for this month, Designing Like Grandma Moses. I'm glad you said that because it led me to that thought. I got to put some stuff up. Anyway, I'm so glad that we're all getting into designing, so many of us, because, you know, I have a rug cooking business. It's great when people buy patterns, but it makes me really, really happy too. It's very gratifying to see people working on their own original pieces because I feel there's more of you in it. And I always want to see more of you. You know, stuff sells. Supplies always sell, but I want to see your original ideas as often as possible. This is a beautiful piece that's obviously been inspired by Magdalena Briner Eby, right? Beautiful 19th century horse pictures that she did, farm pictures that she did living on a farm, rural Pennsylvania, right? Lancaster County. We've done a lot on Magdalena. Very striking. What makes this look like a Magdalena rug? Well, certainly the movement in the background and the silhouette of the horse. There's a lot of people around this time, the 19th century, who were doing similar subjects because what would you hook into a rug? Well, something that you could see, something that you could draw, right? I mean, yeah, you would love to draw maybe a spaceship with an alien coming out of it, if you even had heard of anything like that, probably not. Or, I don't know, a scene from the Odyssey, something like that, but it would be hard. If you're sitting at your window and thinking of a subject and a horse walks by, you think, there we go. We get a lot of horse rugs in the 19th century, and for good reason. With a beautiful lamb's tongue border, lots of movement. These are very Magdalena colors as well. We see a lot of colors that she could dye herself. And remember, her sister worked at, I don't want to say a madhouse, but it's some kind of an institution, right? And she was able to get a lot of clothes through her sister that patients would discard. And for that reason, she had a lot of, you know, working class colors, blues, blacks. She did a lot with her choke cherry bushes and trees with the red berries that she overdyed a lot of stuff. But these really are Magdalena colors as well. Kay says, Kay, I know it's you. One of the things I find interesting about these primitive shapes is that there are so many colors of dark for the horse that give a visual interest. Yeah, isn't that a thing? Isn't it remarkable when you look at dark, how many colors there are? And, you know, it's so important to point that out too. I had that moment today. I forget where I was. I think I was at Friendly's having breakfast with the kids. It's like a diner. And they had a color on the wall that was not white, but it was super pale. It was maybe like the lightest kind of Wedgwood color, really light. And I looked at it and I thought, I was talking, I wasn't focused on it, but I glanced and I thought, oh, how funny. Like, I got the impression that this room was white because it's so light. When I look at it, it's a very interesting color. And then I looked in the room behind, was the same kind of value, a super pale, more of a pistachio color. And I thought, how interesting is this? Because at first glance, it seems, I'm not a huge fan of light colors, so it seems institutional to me, like I'm in a hospital. But at closer glance, they were two very distinct and lovely, calm colors. And one was a blue and one was a green. And I thought, that was a good heads up for me because it reminded me that when you're looking at a section of color, whether it's very darks like the Magdalena or very light like Friendly's, you know, there is a massive spectrum of colors that you can go to. Interesting to keep reminding yourself of that, right? Because you think, when I'm going to lights, well, what do I want? White, vanilla, cream, ivory, antique lace, what am I, champagne, what am I going with? And there's probably 10,000 more colors within those colors that you could get to. that would be distinctly unique, right? How exciting. How exciting. What a beautiful piece, too. Another beautiful piece. Look at these ducks. Now, shout out if you were at ATHA or you know who did these pieces as we go along. We are basically taking a walk through the gallery as if we are there, right? So I'm not able to read the cards from where I am, and if you know, shout it out. Otherwise, if you have a super hankering to know, I can chase some of these pieces for a later show and attribute them. I love this piece. This has a real fairy tale quality for me. Um, I love, what flower is this? I know there's a lot more people who are interested in flowers, knowledgeable than I am, but these ones that have like the trumpet flowers that grow up, is that like, I feel like that's something from what's that nursery rhyme? Something bells and something shells and little maids all in a row. Um, oh gosh, you know what I mean. I feel like it's that climbing flower. But in any case, it has a real 1920s look because we see this kind of floral landscape in a lot of 1920s storybook cottage art, particularly of Alida Akers, right? In Cushing, hollyhock, thank you, I think so. You all are so good. Yep, I think it's hollyhocks. Now I'm still stumbling over that rhyme about little maids all in a row. What was that rhyme? Silver bells and seashells and silver bells or something like that. Not hollyhocks, but the illustrations have hollyhocks in them for sure. Um, Morning glories. They do look like morning glories. I don't know if morning glories are stacked like that. Interesting. But you know, Alida Akers, all her patterns are sold by Cushing, and they do have like this kind of flower prominently displayed in most or many of those designs because they are so synonymous with the 1920s storybook cottage. So beautiful. I did some close-ups here because as busy as this piece is, you can see even the background is not solid. There's a lot of shading here. It is so well done. When you do look at ducks, you see that kind of veining in their colors, don't you? They have like such muscular little bodies, such strong little beaks if you've ever gotten bitten by one. Oh, I just noticed there's like a little white, yellow chubby chick in the back. Cockle shells, there we go. Silver bells and cockle shells, there we go. Gail, happy morning in Australia. Good to see you. Isn't that funny? And you know, did we get a glimpse? No, we didn't. Let me look back one more time. Look at these little chubby bodies of these little yellow ones. This is just so charming. It's so whimsical. It's so beautiful, isn't it? It's such a good piece. I am intimidated by this piece, I have to admit. I would love to do a piece like that, and I'm just, at this point in my hooking career, I'm not there yet. I aspire to it, right? I aspire to it. Silver bells and cockle shells and pretty maids all in a row. Mary, Mary, that's Mary, Mary, quite contrary, right? Those old rhymes are filled with words that are so inspiring. This is another beautiful piece, Old French Fairy Tales. This looks like the cover of a book. I wonder if this piece was in the fairy tale challenge, right? The ATHA challenge, the fairy tale rugs. I wonder, because this certainly does look like Kay. Oh, what's his name? Remember, it was a man that episode of that episode of Cocktail Time that we did ages ago, and the theme was illustrations. We were looking at illustrators who crossed over to rug hooking, and there was some examples of ones that did, and some were just suggestions. And one of them was I feel like it was a Scandinavian man named K something. I think this is probably one of his works because it looks just like one that we saw that night. I'm like hanging on to the memory, but can't quite get there. This is just a remarkable idea. It's a remarkable idea in general to hook the cover of a book that you love, isn't it? And when it's a book as gorgeous as this, it has so much emotion and so much romance attached to it, right? Everything about it. You know, you see a book this age and you think, man, the child who would have had this rug originally book probably didn't have that many books. This was probably a real treasure to have in their hands. They probably read the stories in here over and over and over. When you hold things like this, you really feel that. But this really twinkles, you know, these kind of star-like things behind on this tree. There's some kind of a story happening here with the girl getting gold of some sort from a fairy. I don't know what the reference is. I'd have to get the book. But probably if you went on eBay and looked up Old French Fairy Tales, you might find this book. And it's probably absolutely beautiful, this cover. Ryan says the chick in the back playing. That was the cutest one. He was kind of looking straight at the viewer. kind of with that insolent little look, like a come and get me kind of a look. The whole rug is beautiful. Oh, and you really like the script. I do too. This is this great fairy tale script, very cursive, controversial cursive, right? Because they don't teach cursive anymore. I kind of like that because I'm able to write in cursive when my kids are looking over my shoulder and I'm trying to write something sneaky down. But hey, it is what it is. It is absolutely beautiful. It has a bit of an Arabian Nights quality too. That script is really lavish. A simpler piece, how cute. For me, this still has literary connotations. This looks like the Charlotte's Web pig. What was that pig called in Charlotte's Web? So like, I feel like it began with an H. Because Charlotte was the spider. I'm going to stop. I'm going to leave it to you because I know you remember. But it reminds me of that pig. It has that kind of the big ear, young pig look. Look at all the great colors in this piece. I like the simpleness of the background. Looks like there's a bit of a purple edge to this. Really charming. This is either hooked. Yeah, it looks like it's hooked quite fine. Maybe like a 4 or a 5. I don't know what the scale of it is. I thought for a minute because of the Wilbur. Thank you. Very good, Ryan. Very good. I could do a close-up for the Karen, if you have time. Look at you all. Look at you all. You're all ready for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, right? That pig was the best. This is so cute. I thought it was yarn because of the way the light's hitting it. I'm just seeing the edges of a lot of loops, but I think it's hooked in such a fine manner. You got it, Cheryl. I think it's hooked so fine that it looks a little bit like yarn. Beautiful piece. Great expression on the pig, right? So cheerful. Another amazing piece. Another amazing animal piece. This is so different. So this is done. Now, I'm not going to remember their names, but I'm looking at the cue that I'm getting, which is the picture of the two sisters. Remember, we did a coffee time. It couldn't have been this episode. No, it can't be. I'm looking at my latest issue of Atha. It was one of the last, I think it was Rug Hooking Magazine. Do you remember when we did the coffee time about the two sisters and they worked together, and one was a rug hooker and the other was a needle felter? And the one who was a needle felter was doing a lot with felting the very tricky parts of the composition, like the faces. And they did a lot of compositions that were the two of them, two very similar looking sisters, really gorgeous women, very sort of bohemian look. Let's see what else we can see. So this is a piece of theirs, but we've got some animals in this one, which I have not seen from them yet. So that is interesting. If you remember the names, hit me with them in the thread. Because I know we talked about them for a good long time on Coffee Time because the work was remarkable. I love the feel of this sort of goddess feel of this woman with this hair. The hair really mimics the black sheep, doesn't it? And maybe that's a reference, being the black sheep, right? So that might be like have a bit of a memoir quality to it if she's referring to herself as the black sheep. Just an idea, just a thought. Yes, they were two sisters and their rugs always had fun hair, that's it. So different. It also reminds me a little bit of Fleetwood Mac. I mean, just from the album covers, come on. Stevie Nicks with the flowy white dress. It's there, right? It's there a little bit. Goddess of Wool Sheep. Is that what it was called? That is so cool. See, it has a goddess quality, so I'm glad that word came out of my mouth. It has a goddess quality, and it is curious that she chose the black sheep instead of a regular sheep, right? I mean, it is a regular sheep, but you know what I mean. I don't want to get edgy. Now, another interesting panel, right? We've got two landscapes. They could be by the same person here. They look similar. Oh, you went into their gallery talk. Oh, interesting, Karen. So, because I have yet to be at Sauder, the gallery talks, like, they're there for part of the time, and you get to go in and hear them talk about their pieces that are hanging there. That would be remarkable, wouldn't it? You second me on Fleetwood Mac. I have the Fleetwood Mac station going a lot in Pandora. Comes up a lot on the Joni Mitchell channel too, you know. So I see a lot of white dresses every time that happens. These are two absolutely stunning landscapes. So hard to do. This is way outside of my wheelhouse in terms of what I do, but when I see it, I go, this is remarkable. I mean, this is remarkable. And you know, I spoke to Donna about this past Sunday at Whisrpering Hill because she is really, really an accomplished hooker of the very sort of fine style, very realistic style. And she said, you know, once you get the rules in your head for where shadow is cast and how you handle the light, you just do it. She said it's hard to explain, but you just do it. Once it's locked in, you just do it. And I believe that that's true. I think it's one of those easier said than done, but I think you have to believe that that sentiment is true, that you will practice X amount of times and it will be different for each person. But you will practice and you will get used to putting in the light and the glow and the glitter of the water and all of these little touches that add to this, the luminosity of pieces like this. And you will get used to of doing them, and you will then go forward and do them, right? I believe that it happens that way. I really do. It can't be magic, right? It can't possibly be magic. These are a couple of interesting pieces too, and they have a lot in common. I'm thinking this is the same maker, top and bottom here too, between these two pieces. I see a gargoyle on the top, and again, I have not seen these slides. I was saving them to look together. I see like a Notre Dame style gargoyle coming off on the top piece. Very similar color palette, in fact, the exact same colors as the piece below, which looks like a photograph. Very smart piece, isn't it? Doesn't this happen sometimes when you're walking along on the beach or the boardwalk or whatever, and you want to take a picture and you realize your shadow is in it, right? That's a metaphor for something too, surely. And sometimes you think, oh, look at that. And you give yourself the peace sign or the thumbs up, whatever, and take a picture, or wave to yourself and take a picture. Sometimes the picture of your shadow is the greatest picture, and it creates patterns, and it creates this sort of abstract idea. You're layering yourself onto your surroundings, and that is a story in and of itself. Kay says, I think people will do these, who do these have training as painters. I'd much admire their work, but happy to leave it to those that like to do this type of work. I absolutely agree. That's a very good point. That's a very good point. Crossover training is going to help with whatever you do. And if you are a painter, particularly like a watercolor painter or pastel painter, one of the mediums, I think more than oils, that capturing light really is the purpose of it. Getting luminosity is the purpose of the medium. I think you do have a huge head start if you have that background. I feel like for myself, being flip side of the coin, having a background in theater design and sewing and making costumes and quilting and things like that, I'm much more drawn to graphic art. So all of that's right there at my fingertips. Whereas had I been a painter, maybe that would be right there too. It's an interesting thought. I think you're absolutely right? Because you go toward what you're made of, and you're made of all of these experiences and things that you've tried in the past. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I like that sentiment. Ryan says, adore the shadow piece. Reminds me of mid-20th century self-portraits. It's very artsy, isn't it? It's very artsy, but it's very friendly too. Because we've all done this, been walking along and found this amazing composition opportunity and thought, you know what? I should turn that into a rug, right? There's me in one of my favorite places, the beach and the boardwalk. It's all going together, and there's some mystery around it. Also with a composition like this, as intricate as it is, if you look at all that color change on the top half in the wood, right? Lots of color change, lots of detail, lots of realism. Vivian Mahler in particular, Vivian Mayer in particular. Oh, I don't know that name, Ryan. I'm gonna have to look that. Can somebody, Ryan, maybe you can Facebook me that name so I can check it out after the show, because I'll never remember, and I'd like to. When you do a piece like this too, if you think about it, particularly with winter creeping in on us, I don't want to say it, but sooner or later it will be here. It's later. It's a good idea to do a piece like this because you don't have to deal with the skin tone or the face. And skin tone and face are two of the hardest things there are to do in hooking, in any art form, I think. So this is a good kind of, I don't want to say shortcut because it's extremely artistic, but for people who are beginners who haven't approached this kind of a subject yet, it's not a bad idea. You can get there with this kind of an idea without a doubt. Movement in the air going through the hair. That is nice, isn't it? I missed that, Karen. I missed that. That is like another element to it that we're seeing. We're feeling the sun, right? The sun is certainly here because it's casting the shadow, but also the wind is present because her hair is kind of blowing over to the left. You can almost feel it, right? And she's got a coat on, what looks like a coat. So it's almost like she's there off season, which is the happiest time on the beach for many people. But also those echoes of summer with the sun hitting you and the wind blowing through your hair. It kind of transcends the seasons. It's just, for a very limited color palette, it's a very evocative piece. It's super successful. It's really, really beautiful, isn't it? And I think, again, the subject is something that we can all relate to. Now, I know that this one won best, and I don't know what category. It was one of those I saw on a friend's page on Facebook with a ribbon next to it. This is a beautiful, I'm going to go out on a limb because I can't read the tag. It's quite small. This is a large piece. I'm going to go out on a limb because I do a lot of multi-braid rugs. I'm going to go out on a limb. This is certainly a multi-braid as opposed to a traditional 3-strand braid that you butt and lace. This is a multi-braid where you do not lace or butt, right? You just keep adding strands folded in half. So you add 2 strands every time you add a color or a new piece. You add 2 more strands and you braid the same way. I'm going to have to do a video on this way because it is incredibly easy to do a multi-strand. This probably started out as like a 4-strand and maybe went up to an 8 or a 10-strand. I can't really count it from this distance, but you do get this wonderful mosaic look. You can control your colors when you work in this style. You can weave in after you have completed the piece, which is another interesting thing to think about. So this is a piece that has a multi-strand center, right? And that is a form that is slipping away. We do have to nail the multi-strand down because everybody knows about braiding, but not everybody knows about multi-strand. And again, I personally feel it is a lot easier than traditional braiding. And it works really well with cut-up t-shirts and things like that. You don't have to be thinking about wool because it's a lot of material for any kind of a braid. But if you're using your t-shirts, you'll be amazed at how far you can get. This is a multi-strand in the center that the next ring is hooked by the look of it, and then the final border is one more multi-strand. So absolutely beautiful. How do you end multi-strands when you're working like this? Well, you weave them back in, right? This is one of the beauties of this form when you're working on a braided rug. Well, how do you end your piece? Well, say you have 10 strands at the end, right? You got some blues, you got some yellows. Van Gogh's up in heaven smiling down at you because he loves those colors. You get to the end and you're just going to take each strand with your fingers, or if you're using a tool like a toothbrush or a paper clip or whatever you've got, a tapestry needle, right? Depends on what you're using. You just take that end and you weave it in the direction that you were going. You keep going in the same direction. You don't backtrack. You don't do any weird hairpin U-turns. You keep going and you weave it into the same color, right, where it would go. You try to put it with colors that are like colors and weave it right in between until the tail disappears. You do that with all of them, and you do it remarkably fast. And the amount of play and fooling, as my grandmother would say, with those strands as they go in is incredible. The amount of fooling around you can do once they're in there, kind of pulling and pushing and nudging so that you get that perfect curve on the edge. It's very easy to do. I'm not kidding. I'm going to have to do a video on that. When I see rugs like this, I get nervous because I think this form is very, very rare to see. I'm happy to see people doing braided rugs that we have not seen enough of over the years, right? Oh man, another beauty. Karen says most rugs have the hooking in the middle. Yeah, you know, that's a good point. Most rugs do. That one kind of went out on the limb. It was like they were going for kind of maybe, I was going to say mandala feel, but maybe not. It really is a mosaic feel for me, the way that it looks. It is a limited color palette, and I think that's part of the reason. It's an interesting rug. It's got a lot of beauty. It's got a lot going on. The colors are exquisite. This is a great rug. I think we should talk more about this. Now I'm getting all kinds of thoughts and distracting myself because my brain is going, well, you can do this and do this and do this, and then we'll all know how to do it, and it'll be super accessible because you can put these kinds of braids around your finished hooked pieces. And honestly, they are not hard. I promise you they are not hard. If you can go under, over, you can do it. That's all there is to it, even with 10 strands. What another beauty we're looking at here. This looks like another one of these sort of promo-gown Persian inspired. I don't know that it is a promo-gown, but I was going to say I would guess that it is, but now I'm not sure. Promo-gowns Persians are, or what she called her ethnic rugs, Holy Land rugs, that whole genre. They are often much more bare behind the main motif. Border becomes busy again, but background usually isn't this busy. I'm wondering if it's a Jane McGowan piece because of the continued busyness throughout. It has more of a medieval feel to it because the busyness is sustained, where Permagown tended to take more breaths in between. I'm real curious about it now. I wonder if any of you can read the tag. I'm seeing this as a thumbnail, and you might be seeing it larger. I'd be really interested to know. That is just gorgeous. Beautiful color palette too. It has a bit of that sort of desert colored palette with those deep, deep cornflower blues. A lot of dulls, right? The gray blues, the sort of slate blues, brilliant with oranges, right? Brilliant. This reminds me of the rugs. God, she's my friend. Don't let me black out on her name. Mill River Rugs. Oh gosh, what is wrong with me? Oh, I visited her and I love going back and forth with her. Remember when we did the segments on Mill River Rugs? She does a lot of textiles that are inspired by book covers and different works of art, sculpture, mosaics from a lot of places in Europe and the Middle East as well. This has that kind of a feel to it for me. It's a very different piece, isn't it? It's really got me thinking and guessing, and now that is going to drive me nuts. Another piece along those same lines. This to me looks more like a Pearl McGowan piece. Maybe they both are, right? I certainly don't know. I'm just guessing. This looks more like one of her pieces because it does breathe in the middle. Her style in general is not to overdo it. She's very measured in placement, in color placement, and in the balance and weight of the composition. This is more balanced for me. And of course, this is a one-sided rug, so this is a prayer rug. We know that Pearl McGowan, the more she traveled, became very interested in prayer rugs and, of course, all kinds of textiles, but certainly rugs. And these rugs were very sort of magical and appealing. It makes me think of that great Hitchcock movie, what was it? The Man Who Knew Too Much, with that opening scene with Doris Day. They're at a big market with rugs and stuff in, I want to say Marrakesh, something like that, definitely Morocco. And you see lots of rugs like this. And yeah, people really enjoyed hooking them in the middle 20th century. And seeing a contemporary version hooked like this, it's taking it to the next level. Because we are seeing the sort of design and motif of the middle 20th century when this rug was made so famous and popular by Pearl McGowan. But for me, we are seeing it with the increased interest of having this sort of what looks like an illumination around the edges, right? Picking out the flowers with so many more colors than were typical to see in the Pearl McGowan era, the same patterns of rugs. So many more shades of colors, and experimenting with colors that were a little bit outside the comfort zone at that time. Getting away from spice brown and mummy brown and all of the dusty roses. This one really is including lots of wild, very mystical blues, a whole palette of blues, lots of kind of golden bronzes and ochres, some real orange peel oranges, right? There's a lot going on here. The colors are way more far out than I would expect to see on an earlier rug, although this design I would expect to see on an earlier rug. That's one of the joys of picking up an earlier commercial pattern and going to town with it your way. Do it exactly the way that you want, in the colors that you want, and you will be amazed. Even patterns that seem like dated, this is not one of them. This is not one of them. But sometimes you get a floral that's very ordinary. If you just think about challenging yourself to doing a different color palette, you will be amazed at what you can do by just shifting color. Oh, Linda Ann, it would be good to do the multi-strand. I think we have to plan that. Oh, thank you, Ryan. Thank you. That's awesome. I'll definitely check the Instagram. Karen says most rugs have the hooking in the middle. Yep, I was interested that that the two tan leaves were centering upper left and lower left bottom. The two. Oh, I see what you mean in the outer border. Isn't that interesting? You know, that's one of the things that is taking away from the sturdy balance. This is a very stable rug in terms of composition, right? It's very well balanced. With a rug this well balanced, you can break rules. And it's not breaking the rules. You place the colors where you want. But you can do odd things with color placement, like having those two colors appear only on one side and even worse in the corners, right, for instability. You can do that because the composition is very stable. It's very symmetrical. Your eye can handle that jump. And indeed, it creates interest because you remembered that those were two of the things that you were looking at when you were standing in front of it. I missed those. If I was looking at it, I might have caught different things. But it is indeed a very straightforward composition of an Eastern prayer rug that has been decorated so beautifully and lavishly with very creative color palette here. It has been popped to the point of being looking like a medieval illumination, to me, more than a prayer rug. The color palette is just wild. Isn't it interesting that can be done, and that's how you do it? This is interesting too. I think I used the thumbnail. I think there were more of these. This must have been a specific challenge, the multiples. I think we're going to see more of these later in the slideshow, but it appears that, and if anybody knows the detail of this challenge, please chime in. Even if you're watching this video later, go ahead and add a comment so we can all check back and learn more. It looks like there must have been a challenge where people were doing replicas or executing the same pattern. These are two very monochromatic, right? This is blue and white for both of these. I can't remember with the others. I feel like they also had a lot of blue. Very Delft palette, isn't it? This is the Dutch palette, man, what I know. Absolutely beautiful. And isn't it always fun to see the same pattern done in multiple ways? It gives us such inspiration. The top one is, I love the top one. Very open, very bright. You work a little bit with monochromatics. You work a little bit. The plus side is you get this amazing atmosphere that you can't get right with the full palette. It feels like nighttime. It feels like Christmas in Connecticut. A sleigh is going to coming running through. It's almost bedtime. Everyone's cozy with their quilts pulled up. It's so charming, right? It's such a charming feel. The one on the bottom utilizes a slightly different device. It looks like there's a dark sort of layer in the sky. Maybe it is a behind the mountain kind of a thing. Maybe there's a mountain picked out in the bottom one. Multiples of the Lisanne Miller pattern. The top one was Lisanne Miller's. Okay, I absolutely love it. I love them both. The bottom one uses a device that could be a dark sky popping a mountain. To me, it initially read like a theatrical curtain, and I do like that reading too. Of course, what the person means and the way that you read it are not always the same thing, and they don't have to be the same thing. They can be completely different. You are allowed to enjoy, just like Ryan said, you are allowed to enjoy art the way that you enjoy art. Sometimes I think about this, and I keep thinking, if there's a writer out there, do this, because I'm a writer too, but I'm never going to get to this idea. I'm too into my rug books right now. But I always think if a person were to come back, like an artist, a famous artist, let's say Van Gogh, right? He's a tough one because we know so much about his life, and he did so much with diaries, but just as a placeholder. Wouldn't it be curious if he were to come back and be standing in, let's say, the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, in one of the big galleries with tons of his pieces hanging around the room? And what if he were to hear the tour guide giving commentary for every painting and saying, this was Van Gogh's blue period, right? I probably have said this before, but I think this is a thought worth revisiting. I think about this all the time. What if Van Gogh were to be there like as a ghost? Very Noel Coward, isn't it? Very blithe spirit. What if he were there as a ghost and listening to someone run their mouth about why he has so many blues in this picture, why he has so many oranges in this picture? And what if he could speak up and say, that's not true at all. The reason there's so much orange in this picture and there's no blue in this one is because I ran out of blue and I didn't have any money to get any more. Right? We are always, whether it's literature or art, trying to layer our own interpretations onto pieces of art. And it's fun to do it. And if you get value out of doing it, it's interesting, it's fun, it's a great exercise, why not? But let's not take it as gospel, the stories that we make up in our heads and things that tour guides said. Remember, I was a tour guide before I had my kids. You can't believe the things that some tour guides say. The garbage that comes out of some people's mouths is very funny, but usually incorrect. So it's just worth thinking about. We can all look at something and see something different, and that's the fun of art. That's what makes it different than every other thing, isn't it? The thumbnail for this show was the other hooked pieces with the same design. Excellent. April says, speaking of books, when will your first book be available to order? I think it is on it. Shouldn't I know? I think it's being published by Fox Chapel. It'll be available like at, if you have Barnes & Noble near you and at all the big craft stores, it'll be available in all those places. But it should be on Amazon right now. And they're using my name, which is Deanna David. And it's spelled like Dina, D-E-A-N-A. It's a bad spelling. I had no choice over that. So you should be able to find it there. It should be on pre-order. So you can at least bookmark it if you don't want to pre-order it. I know they're still playing with the cover because we have not made final decisions about the cover or the title, but that is the book. And they are quickly ramping up to editing it all. They are making edits that I don't have any control over. And I know so many people have sent work. I put all of it into the draft. If I asked you for something, it's there. But I want you to know, and I'm not just like passing the buck, when they make edits, they will not consult me about that stuff. The editing department will do that. And for things that get kind of not used, it's not because they are not fantastic. It is because maybe the photo was too low of a quality, and they don't like low quality. They like very high quality. And they even had me retake some of my stuff multiple times for this reason. So we'll see how it goes. But when the book comes out, if you sent me some images and they were not put into the final book, do not be disheartened. I'm sure a lot of my text will not be in the final book because it was a long book at the end of the day. 14 original rug techniques with original rugs and galleries for each chapter was a lot. So they are editing it however best it works. And anything that is left over, we will use it ourselves, right? I am still inching toward a publication. I'm working on multiple other books right now. Some project secret, others not. Lots of magazine stuff happening. We're going to use all of your great stuff and all of the new stuff that I haven't been sent yet. We're going to share and use this for all the years to come. But I think it's available on Amazon right now. And the next one, not yet, because that's coming out next year for Rug Cooking Magazine, the Design-like book. That'll be a lot of fun. Ryan says, unrelated, but who did the jack-o'-lantern witch behind you? The jack-o'-lantern. Oh, that's not a rug. That's that this one? That's not a, that's, Ryan, that's the popcorn stuff from like the 60s or the 70s. It's plastic. I found it in the basement while I was looking for other stuff. And this hat really got me. Like the colors got me. So I brought it in, and I have about 20 more of these. Shame on me, right? They remind me of being in my private school back in the day with the nuns, and they had these all over the place. I just love seeing them. It is too early. But yeah, that's not a rug piece. That would make a great rug piece, though, wouldn't it? I just have to say this as an aside, and then we're going to go back to Sauder Village. Somebody said something about books, and I have to say the other day, not book related, but I do have some book stories for you that I'll save. I saw what I thought was a great movie, and I wonder if anybody else saw it. My buddy Jay is moving, right? He's got the antique business on the other side of the wall. He's still here, but he's moving house, and all of the furniture was gone. And I went over there, and we ordered some food. I was just trying to help out with some last-minute stuff, and we decided to do some Woody Allen movies. And I thought I was pretty caught up on Woody Allen movies because I love them. But there were two that I had not seen before. I forget what the second one was. It was the Something Festival, and it was very good. But the one that really got me was called Wonder Wheel, and it was with Cate Blanchett and Justin Timberlake, the singer. And it was not a comedy. It was not a comedy. But it was set on Coney Island in the 1950s, and it was a drama. And it was one of these things I'm just never going to forget. It did not get good reviews, so maybe I shouldn't even be mentioning it. But I'm telling you, I have not stopped thinking about that movie ever since. It had some twists and turns that were it was just amazing. So just putting it out there. If you've got a great recommendation, please put it out there. The kids are going back to school. It is feasible that I might be sitting on the couch sometime soon hooking again. So put out your great suggestions too. I love this piece, Karen. Thank you for saying that this is a Cushing pattern that Lizanne Miller hooked that top one. So this is available through Cushing, right, in Maine. And there will be more of those to come. Okay, so this is Lizanne's Closer Up. I didn't realize I had this. I love when I do too, Ryan. I follow up on so many things that you all talk about in the thread. I try not to deviate too much from the script in my head that I'm doing on these shows, but I love talking about this stuff and getting suggestions. This is absolutely beautiful. And did you notice, I didn't notice the further back photo, but on the left, it's like these arms, the branches of the trees with the little fronds. You can see like all the little needles even, and the lumps of snow on top. It is so charming, so charming. And this is the one on the bottom. I think it is probably a mountain with a dark sky behind. I like the theatrical curtains still, but I love it. And I love aren't the shadows in the snow very well done? I mean, so hard to work in a limited color palette, But I think my favorite thing about this rug, I love the whole thing, but the shadows are exquisite. They are really well done. You can feel the unevenness of the terrain, the way that the shadows bend. It's remarkable, isn't it? Oh, this is a nice one. This has a real blanket feel for me. We did that big segment on, Native American, North American blankets, different areas. This reminds me of that a little bit. It has a quilty quality too, doesn't it? I see some courthouse steps there. Really beautiful. This does remind me of a quilt as well. If you're a quilter, do you remember that moment in quilting that was called row by row? Because this is something that we could think about as hookers too. Row by row quilting was one of these things in the 80s, 90s that really stuck for quilters, because the premise of it was that you would create a bar, like a pattern, whether it was a scene, little farm scene, maybe some Noah's Ark animals, maybe some snowflakes, maybe just some shapes, triangles. And you would do a row, and then you would do another row and sew them together. And the idea was that you were putting your piece together literally row by row. Whether it was middle out, top to bottom, bottom to top, who cares? It would be your piece and you'd figure it out as you go. But I think that's a really interesting idea for rug hookers too, because we sometimes become way too invested in the planning part of it. Now, some of us are more technical than just fly by the seat of the pants, and you feel more comfortable when everything is planned to a T before you start working on it. But there are other people who feel more comfortable not making a full commitment to the piece and flying by the seat of the pants. And for those people, thinking about this idea of the row by row quilt is a great exercise, because if you're thinking geometrics or seasonal, I'm going to do like 4 rows or 12 rows and try to put different things from different months in my rows, right? Or block by block is the same thing. But these row by row quilts really caught my imagination when they came out, because I thought, so interesting. With a piece like this, you see that the middle strip is like a long carpet runner kind of a design. So it's entirely likely that the planning started with that. But there are color changes top to bottom. And you can see how it would be a fun and freeing exercise to hook a center like this, or top to bottom or bottom to top, and then decide once that piece was in what the next piece was. And how would you do it? Well, you would get your Sharpie out and you would be brave. You would put your big girl or your big boy pants on and say, I'm doing it. I'm making a mark on my backing. I'm doing it. And just go row by row, even if it's a small piece. See if you can do, if you're a beginner or you just feel like a challenge, see if you can do a row by row design that's a table runner. It's not a huge commitment. Maybe it has autumn colors, right, so you can use it over the next few months. Maybe it has winter colors because you don't project forward to finishing it until January, something like that. No harm in that, right? Interesting. Oh, have a nice weekend. You have to go. Oh, you have to go to your grandkids' show. Oh, how nice, Kaz. Out in Wisconsin, totally different time zone too. Probably still light out there. Yet it does have a very southwest feel, doesn't it, Karen? It really is lovely. Interesting, though. Food for thought. See, looking at each of these rugs, there's just different food for thought for each one, isn't there? You admire, you love, you're inspired, but it gets you thinking too. What a piece this is. Wow. Oh, wow. Okay, I see. So this looks like the world, and you're seeing different animals like the polar bear, and the penguins are down in the south, in the pole area where it's like an icy cap, right? You're seeing different animals in different places. That's interesting. Isn't that interesting? Wow. That's a remarkable rug. That's a real statement. And it must be quite large, because I'm looking at the spots and the stripes on the different animals, and they are finely done. That is just, wow. That's a beauty. That is, I marvel at that. I mean, the workmanship there is crazy. We are seeing like the North Pole cap on the top, so that makes a lot of sense to me. Isn't that cool? The suggestion of what do they call those stripes? Oh, come on. Longitude, latitude. Is there a name for the grid itself? Or is those just the longitude, latitude lines? I wonder if there's a name for that. The girl who did this, one is a veterinarian. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. That is so cool. I'm having an awful flashback. I have to stop, but I'm having an awful flashback with that circle. My mom will remember this story, but one time when this is one of my earliest memories, right? It's a stupid short story. Our babysitter, Renee, I probably shouldn't say that, took us to the zoo. And she normally took us to the dog races, which my mom and dad did not know. She took us to the zoo one time. She always had us in the back of her car, no seatbelts, of course. This is like the 70s, 80s, probably 70s. She took us to the zoo, and there was like this round window like that you looked in at the animals, and she thought it was concave, but it was convex, and she leaned toward it to look at the animals inside that pen. It was like a big expanse, and she hit her face so hard that she said so many swears that it was the first time for me I heard a bunch of those swears. She strung a whole bunch of them together. It was like the Christmas story, like the cloud just hanging there. It was unbelievable. And then I went home and I told my mom that Renee took us to the zoo and how great that was, because she normally took us to the dogs. And my mom said, "What do you mean she takes you to the dogs?" And I said, "She takes us to the dogs every day after when she picks us up from school." And my mom said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "The dogs race around the track." And my mom said, "Oh my God." She took us with her boyfriend every day. I mean, it was just crazy. But anyway, circle, animals through the circle. It reminds me of Renee. I have not thought about her for 50 or 45 years. Beautiful piece. Absolutely beautiful piece. It's great to have that backstory that the maker was a veterinarian too, right? Absolutely beautiful piece. Very different. Peace Wall, Bisbee, Arizona. Oh, I don't know what the Peace Wall is. I wonder if anybody's on from Arizona. This piece is crazy. You like that, Ryan, huh? And Gail likes that one too. Love the bison and the elephant. That was a remarkable piece. Oh, I love this piece too. This piece is my style. I love this kind of thing, but I don't know what the peace wall is. Maybe somebody can educate me on this. I like the symbolism here. We've got the dove, right? The peace dove. We've got some stairs going up or coming down. Interesting. This is a beautiful composition. It does have this kind of goddess laurel birch kind of quality to it. What she's wearing is a bit goddessy, isn't it? That drapey green stuff, but it's not that goddessy pure white, is it? It's a beautiful kind of hippie type color, right? Really 1970s color. Isn't that charming? Adore this piece. Very Woodstock. Very Woodstock, you're right. Vintage illustration, you're right. It does feel like that. It does feel like a poster or something, doesn't it? That is super cool. I'll look later and see if anybody, there's weird references in here too, like I'm seeing some peaches. Maybe that's an Arizona reference. Peace Wall, interesting. Oh, I love this piece. It's so colorful. It brings up all kinds of questions, doesn't it? Really cool. Let's see, we might come back to that if we learn more about it. Ooh. There's a lot of pieces in this show that are, I think, older patterns that are done in a remarkably fresh way, and in a lot of the sort of goldy bronzes with blue with rust, right? We've seen a lot of this. I wonder, is it a theme or is it a coincidence? Because I know I love this piece. I think this is my favorite of these kinds of pieces. I love this light background. Do you notice that it's much more white? I see there is an actual shadow in the piece, but the background is a different white than the border. The border is more of an ivory. Karen said, Road Trip America Castle Rock is an imposing hunk of rock on the side of Tombstone Canyon in Bisbee, Arizona. Rose Johnson was commissioned by the city of Bisbee to paint I bet you're going to say mural. Let me go back to it. Let's have one more look over there, and then we'll complete this thought. Oh, wow. Rose Johnson was commissioned by the city of Bisbee to paint I think it's going to be mural, some huge piece of art, right? So that's the America Castle Rock. Interesting. Now, wait a minute. Is this the place, is this that place that's like a amphitheater, like an outdoor amphitheater? I saw, not in person, but a comedian. No, that's Colorado, right? There's some place in Colorado that almost looks like a Greek amphitheater outside, like under the stars, with steps cut into the rock. But I think that's Arizona, if you know what I'm talking about. Interesting. I don't know this part of the country at all. This is all exciting. Ooh, okay. Great. We'll see. I think Karen's working on her next sentence, and I bet we're going to get even more information there. I just love this piece. It does have kind of a book cover, book plate quality to it. It really has a flight quality to it, almost like butterflies. I don't know that they are butterflies. Lotus flowers, right? It has a bit of an Egyptian feel to it, but the colors are so light. If there was more like brick kind of color in it, or turquoise, I'd say this is a super Egyptian piece to me. Even the central flower looks kind of like an Egyptian type flower. That's Red Rock. Okay, thank you, Ryan. Red Rock Amphitheater in Colorado. I saw, what's his name? Bill Barr, something like that. His show there, it was hilarious, on the TV. I love this piece. Look at the color shading in the corner flowers, how soft it goes out to the corner. It really looks like a painting. I wonder if this maker has done some painting. I would not be surprised in the least. This is really smart color planning. You know, the rugs, like original mid-century Pearl McGowan patterns that had this kind of a feel to it. I don't know that this is one by any means. I don't know. But, you know, she would routinely go to the Cushing colors. And they routinely went to the same Cushing colors. So for all of the dyeing and recipes that happened at that time, bronze green was a big color. And this really does look like bronze green. All the different blues. I mean, there's like robin's egg blues, there's Wedgwood, there's indigos, there's lots of different blues. This strikes me as like a Cushing color palette. And also with the rosy colors, right? They do a lot. There was a lot with brick and the crossovers to the mummy brown color and the spice brown. These were their go-to colors in the middle 20th century. This has some of those colors in it, but this very bright white sort of background really pops these colors in a way that I have not seen this color palette play before. It is really remarkable. Karen says, Bisbee, Arizona, Rose Johnson was commissioned by the city of Bisbee to paint a mural dedicated to world peace on the concrete wall that abuts Castle Rock. Excellent. That is really cool. That's another thing I want to Google when I get back, because I have not seen that. Ryan, can you send me that too? I'm such a grabby baby. I got to keep a notepad next to me so I can stop asking for favors. Wow. You know, oh, yeah, this is really nice, isn't it? I'm wondering if anybody remembers, are the circles hooked, like the Millie Fury circles hooked, or are they quilly? Because it could go either way, couldn't it? I'm really intrigued by this. It looks like there's a lot of applied bling, like buttons and felt flowers around the border. Absolutely beautiful, very stylized. I'm picking up on some possibly proddy rather than applied flowers on the top, right? Breaking the border, one on the right too. Yeah, it looks like there's some proddy flowers. This is just awesome. I love it too. Linda Ann, this has a bit of a Van Gogh quality to it. Not the fashion reference, right? Not a woman with like a fashionable dress, but just that swirl, I think, is always going to feel like Van Gogh. The colors and the amount of patterning is remarkable. I love this border. I'm very distracted by the piece above it because I don't think I have a photo of that piece. And I love that border too. I wonder if that's a lot of sort of penny rug felts with buttons sewn on, or if that is just a wild collection of buttons. We always agonize with the question, how do we finish our rugs? Well, these are two examples of doing your rug with a very, very different finish, right? These are not traditional. I don't usually like applied anything. I don't like anything like this, but I have to say, these are two very, very big exceptions to what my usual taste directs me toward. I love the border on the bottom one, and I love the border on the top one. These are remarkable. Karen says this was hooked. This was done by Ania. I had lunch with her. Oh, how nice is that, Karen? The gold reminds me of Klimt. Oh, you are good, Kay. That is very Klimt, isn't it? All that busyness, all that. You know, that's funny that you say that because it does have the Van Gogh feel. But now looking at a central female figure in this kind of a dress, that is very Klimt. Good on you to pick up on that. That is a very strong reference. That's really lovely, isn't it? And it's nice to do a face that is a little bit anonymous, right? Because you don't have to drive yourself crazy with details. A more graphic face, it's a very heart-shaped face, this one, Little Widow's Peak. Really lovely, really striking. Lots of information there, lots of information left out. And that can leave our minds wondering, thinking, superimposing people that we know onto that face. I mean, it's just a great, great piece. This is the most recent At the Celebration magazine. Okay, so these pieces will be in the next celebration, or maybe this celebration. I don't know that I have this celebration. And the hair, too. Interesting. Great. All right. I wonder what Enya would say. Interesting. I wish we could ask her. Maybe we can get her to come on to one of our coffee times and we can ask her some questions, look at some of our other work. I doubt that this is the first time that she's struck out with doing this kind of applied medium on top of a hooked rug because it's expertly done. I love the spacing of it. It's very, to use a word we used earlier, measured, right? That's a thing. That's a thing. The top one, not so much. It's like the less or more is not what's happening on top. I love that collection of buttons. I love them all being pretty much the same size. Knowing that they're the same size on the top rug, my eye keeps going back and forth searching for colors that are like, right? Because I'm looking for differences because the buttons or bottle caps are roughly the same size. Very cool. But on Enya's rug underneath, very measured, very controlled placement, which is a wonderful thing to see because the inside is very heavily patterned. So it gives your eye a break, but it still maintains that whimsical fun, isn't it? Anya. Oh, Anya. Anya. I know a lot of people named Anya, and I've never seen it spelled like that, so I'm going to guess it's Anya. It's a beautiful name. I got my celebration issue this week. Oh, okay, I haven't. I hope that that's going to come because I would love to look at these with you. Oh, good. Okay, I must be behind. Good, April. Whew, this is lush. Look at this beauty. Holy mackerel. We'll do a couple of more and then we'll stop because I can see that we have a lot more episodes. Karen, thank you so much for sending so many images. It gives us so much to dig into. And now that we have agreed to not be intimidated by any of the rugs in here, we can really enjoy them as a spectator and pick out things that we like, that we can use, that we admire. There's so much in this rug for me. I mean, I'm seeing two peacocks, right? Because I flipped this one horizontally so that you could look at it larger, but it was hanging vertically. Celebration is adapted by a design from Diana Shelleroux. Okay, great. Celebrations say adapted by a design from Diana Shelleroux. That's the woman in the dress, I guess. Absolutely beautiful. Interesting. That is interesting. I'm upset I don't have my celebration, but that is interesting. Linda Ann says, I really like how the attached flowers blend into the background. Let's look at that again. I think that's a big part of it because this feels like a storytelling rug to me. And I agree with you. Some of those flowers that are hooked and then seeing the same color flower applied to the top and floating, flying, drifting off into the border creates the kind of motion that is hard to get in a textile. It's more of the idea, isn't it? That these flowers have come alive, have come out of the composition, and are now active. They're floating. They're wild and free. And it does give you, it tells a story, right? Seeing them making their way up into the border in a way, a big up, up, and away theme is absolutely beautiful. It becomes a storytelling rug the more you look at it. It's just a beautiful piece. Love the color, my kind of rug. Me too. I love it. It makes me rethink. Now, isn't it the best thing in the world to be wrong? I say this to my kids all the time. When you have fights with people or whatever, and I mean, occasionally I do, it happens, right? You have a falling out with somebody. It's so nice to go full circle and realize that you were wrong. And it's so nice to be able to say, yeah, no, I didn't used to like that, but now I do. I've never liked stuff applied to other stuff. That's just been a thing with me. I'm not a big collage person in terms of like what I like personally. Not that I don't value it and think it's beautiful and interesting. I used to contribute to Somerset Studio in every issue back in the day. I used to like it more, but I got away from it. And now when I look at that piece, I think, oh, I would like to get back into that because I love the way that she applied different things to the finished rug. I often don't like it. It doesn't make sense to me the way that things are sometimes applied to a hooked rug. It doesn't make sense, and then my brain says, "Beautiful, but I don't have a real connection to it." Right? that piece, it's like, whoa, I have a real connection to it. There's a story here in the way things are floating away, like Linda Ann said. Interesting. It makes you think. And that makes me think, I think I've been wrong. I think it's time to revisit the idea of applying stuff to a hooked rug, because that just reminded me that it can be done in so many different ways, and in a way that's a little more sort of artful than some of the ways that I've seen it done, or more my style. Who's to say it's artful, right? Just more my style. So interesting. I love to be wrong. All right, so I'm going to move away from this rug, although I would love to keep this. This is definitely in my top 5 of rugs. This one is so beautiful. Oh, we moved away from here, and we were here. So I tipped this rug. It was hanging top to bottom, because you can see there are peacocks, and it does have an orientation. I moved it to the side so we could look at it closer up, because it's very dense. It is so beautiful. How can a rug be this busy and have this many colors and still be this strong with this kind of visual impact? Well, there's 2 things going on here that are very important. One of them is the playing card factor. And what I mean is, when it's whether tipped this way or tipped vertically the way that I think it's meant to hang, like a playing card, it is up to down reversed, right? So half to half, the top half is the same as the bottom half, except one half is reversed. That is the playing card configuration. When you do that, you have just as stable of a composition as if you have a perfectly symmetrical composition with like a little primitive house on each side, and everything is equal and measured and perfect side to side. This works the same way with the playing card twist, right? The second thing that's helping this composition be as effective as it is the black background. Now, with something like this, you can imagine with this many colors in it, if you aren't going to go bold with black or very bright, more challenging, I think, with white, if you aren't going to go for one of those 2, what color could you possibly choose where you could be comfortable and confident that every element of this rug is going to pop? Because every other color is kind of in this rug. So with that in mind, you really have to think. And I did this with my mom. I was looking at a Van Gogh piece that she was punching for the Van Gogh exhibit. Oh, and the girl just wrote and said, what date are you thinking of for that? If you're doing the Van Gogh exhibit and you want to send something to me to hang up in Hartford, I think I'm going to say January, because isn't January the most miserable time of the year when there's nothing going on? Would give everybody something to do and think about if it was like January. I'm tempted to say that because it gives us a few more months to get stuff done. I'm sure I could even say February. Let me know if you have a feeling on that, because I know people are working on it now, or that it's like the next project they're going to work on. I haven't even worked on mine. I will. January is what popped into my mind, maybe the end of January for whatever. But anyway, if you're doing Van Gogh, that's what I'm thinking, so you do have time without a doubt. I had this conversation with my mom about her Van Gogh rug. She's got our little dog Buttons on a Van Gogh's chair. And in the background is a Van Gogh sky, and it's all swirled out like the piece we just saw. It's beautifully swirled out in yellows and oranges and blues. And the chair is like a cadmium red, orange red. I pushed her in that direction because it really stood out. And there's little Buttons, who's a Yorkshire Terrier, who's always at risk of blending in with the background because he's very close to golds and yellows, and he's gold and yellow. So she has gone really out of her way with getting a lot of dark colors behind his profile so he pops. And then last night we were having conversations you never thought you had when you were 16 and cool. We were having the what color should the seat be conversation. And I was saying, man, you have got almost every color in this piece right now. And for the same reason, we are kind of in trouble, because you definitely can't put anything that's close to a blue, a yellow, an orange, or a red in here. There are a lot of dark darks. There are a lot of light lights. There's a lot of yarn in there that is not solid. It has a tweed appearance, so you don't want to go too close to neutrals and grays at that point, because in terms of the tone, it could come too close and wash out. And the chair seat is important because the chair seat supports the dog, which is the main motif. And we ended up pulling this really crazy electric purple. I dyed it. It's the color Purple Pop by Dharma, right? Dharma in California does the dyes. Purple Pop is not like any other color. It's a crazy color. That's the color that we chose because it went great with the red, and nothing like it was represented in the rest of the piece, and we needed that to be there because we were out of colors, that's kind of what's happening here. I think it makes perfect sense to do a black background. I would have done the same thing. I wouldn't have even dared to do an aubergine or a navy because I would be too scared. It wouldn't be enough contrast. This is perfect the way it is. This looks like a true labor of love. Oh, Kay says, hooked by Lee Williams, color planned by Nancy Blood. Okay, let me pop up a little bit. Let me see what we're talking about. This one, love the color. Pattern called Toulet, hooked in a 3-cut from Jane McGowan Flynn from Celebration. Oh, Kay, is it this one or is it the one before? David, good to see you. Hello from the artist community from Carrizozo, New Mexico. David, it's great to see you. Welcome to cocktail night. I'm drinking a Pepsi, but welcome to cocktail night. It's great to see you. I'm wondering if the Jane McGowan is the beautiful yellow with the 2 colors of white in the background, or it's this rug with the peacocks. Let's get clarity on that before we break. Karen says, master in color to still draw out the peacocks with all of the other colors. Absolutely. You know, I feel what is drawing the peacocks out are the feathers, right? You see that shape of a feather, like that tail feather, that oval, and you can't think of anything but a peacock. And then once your eye catches the movement of that, it draws you right into those blues because the blues are very strong. There's a lot of color changing in those birds, but they are holding their own. They are absolutely holding their own. It reminds me of like the unicorn tapestry. It reminds me of these complicated and detailed tapestries from the Renaissance period that were just layered and chock full. This one, thank you, Kay. Okay, thank you so much. So this is a Jane McGowan Flynn pattern from Celebration. Okay, great. Interesting. That is so good. Absolutely beautiful. But a couple things, I might do one more rug, but a couple things to think about from this episode that I think are helpful, right? Thinking about doing design-wise the playing card thing. Because we always, as rug hookers, tend to work, and I do it too. I'm doing it right now on the Halloween piece I'm working on. I wonder if wait a minute, let me see if I have, yeah, it's right here. I'm working on this Halloween piece, but if you remember, or you're in our Facebook group, I did not plan to do this. It happens to be here because I'm a slob. It's still on my area. You know, I do a lot of designing like this, and I show this sometimes depending on the class we're doing. And this is the original drawing for the design. I ended up putting 2 trick-or-treating ghosts, right, because it's very big, my piece. This would be a good size for a miniature Russian punch. But I do a lot of designing like this, and a lot. It's when I feel like it. It doesn't work when you don't feel like it. Nothing works when you don't feel like it. But I do like this, and a little piece like this, and that's not even squared. And I take out my Sharpie and I draw half of it, and I say, I like the house. I think there's going to be a hill. I like it when houses connect to other houses. It seems very welcoming to me. So I do that, and then I trace it on the other side. I like to do little borders like this. I did this in 2020, right? And I'm just getting to it now. I open it up. I put one element that's not symmetrical, and that is the moon. And I'm working on this piece now with the 2 characters added here. But I think as rug hookers, we most often go for the low-hanging fruit, which is this kind of designing, right? I do it too. This is primitive design. This is folk design. This is what people have done through the centuries. Designed like this and tried to put it up to your window or some light, copy it through. So you open it up and you've got a very stable design because it's symmetrical. And then you can play with it and make changes, but the design itself is going to be very, very strong. We don't think as often as rug hookers who design, we don't think as often of doing this as we do of doing this. You see what I mean? So doing something like this is interesting because if you have a design up here that you're going to turn into a playing card design, you aren't going to trace it like this. You're going to cut it in half, flip the bottom, and then trace it. And you're going to have the playing card reverse. And that is going to be just as interesting, exciting, and stable of a composition, but with that funny little twist in it like we're seeing with the peacocks. I think it's an interesting detail. It's something that everybody can do. Everybody can try this. This has a lot of layers of color, of flowers. Every inch is packed. It is a carpet of flowers, right? And we get 2 bonus birds to boot. But it's a remarkable piece. It is so beautiful. And if you're thinking this is way outside my abilities, I'm telling you it's not. I'm telling you that is how it's done. Somebody has, Jane McGowan Flynn, right? Her grandmother was Pearl McGowan, so she had a good leg up. She drew a peacock and she surrounded it by flowers. She did the playing card flip, and she traced it exactly the other way. And then she put a border around it, and she added some of the flowers that she had already used. It's not easy, but it's not magic. And it's something that you can do, truly. Let's look at one more before we log off. I am getting terribly tired tonight. Oh, this is a nice one to end on. This is a nice print. This is my favorite stuff. This is my favorite. Oh, I'm seeing more favorite stuff within the favorite stuff. So think about that little picture I just showed you. My little house is there. Same thing, right? You do a design like this by folding your thing in half. You got one flower, very Pen Dutch, right? A bit of a bleeding hearts design coming out of the flower. Beautiful robin redbreast standing on top. Your paper's folded in half. You trace it on the other side. You look at the negative area where it's just emptiness. And in this case, there's been added like an arc, kind of like pennants or postage stamp trim down the arc, a central flower that is going to mimic the sort of sunburst, sort of Ben Franklin sun rising, sun setting flowers in the corners. Two things I'm super in love with in this piece. Looks like there might be some Prati in the center with a little bird's nest, and that is truly sweet, truly sweet. I love to see bleeding hearts. This is one of my favorite flowers. I just love to see them. They're done in very mellow, kind of salmony colors. I love that. My favorite thing in this piece is that kind of pennant style border that is also part of above the backs of the birds that has been done in a rainbow of colors. It is a controlled rainbow, kind of that desert rainbow, right? The desert colors again. Really beautiful colors. Rust, salmon, clay, robin's egg blue, eggplant, really. And the bees. That was the last one, Linda Ann. The bees. I mean, that's just something extra. That's just an extra gift that you get. Isn't that extraordinary? I just think that is so, so pretty. I love the Pen Dutch piece, very fracture. It is so Pen Dutch fracture that it's crazy. But it has that, the birds are so fleshed out, the robins, it has that primitive look. It's got a Pen Dutch design for shoresies, but it is a very primitive look. It's so beautiful, isn't it? And then the antique black around the border, that's a lot of directional hooking. You see how it has that very up, down, side striping on the border. That antique black isn't a solid black. It's black with lots of other darks dumped on it. So maybe the colors that we're seeing here, maybe there's the eggplant dumped on it, the salmon dumped on it. You can see there are some light shades that are really picking up that pennant trim, postage stamp trim, whatever you like, whatever you choose, right? You can call it whatever you want. I think they're using that in the antique black. It is fun to play with dye and to dump colors onto black because you get these antique blacks that are mixes. They don't hook a solid. For all intents and purposes, they do. You get a dark background, and sometimes that's what you want. But when you look a little bit closer, there's so much more to see. There's so many more colors in there. What a beautiful piece. Let's end on that piece. That really is a stunning piece. We have so much more to look at Sauder Village. I guess we're going back to Sauder Village on Monday. There are worse things. And I will be with you Monday. The kids start school on Tuesday. I was afraid I would take Monday off to do one last thing. But as I'm going into New York City with them tomorrow, I think that is our last thing. We're going to have a quiet day Monday so they're not ramped up for their first day of school. So sad. I'm going to be so sad. But I will be with you Monday. We'll have a great episode, and we will return to Sauder Village. If you need me, I am at ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com right anytime. Kay says, sorry, I didn't think to get Celebration issue out sooner. Oh, but the Old French Fairy Tale piece is designed and hooked by Elise Olson from Fargo, North Dakota, 3 and 5 cut. Do you remember the book at the beginning, The Old French Fairy Tale? That I said it looks like an illustration by Kay. I forget his last name. That's something to check too. But at least we know that it was done by Elise Olson from Fargo, North Dakota. So, I mean, that piece was extraordinary. Thank you so much. We can always touch on these. Now that I know it's out in illustration, maybe mine comes tomorrow. I'm going to have to check on that, aren't I? That always makes me nervous when I don't have it on time. Let's look at that on Monday. And if you have it handy on Monday, or you're around, or someone has one on Monday, we might encounter some more that are from Celebration, and then that will help to do the attribution. Sounds great. Happy weekend, everybody. Have a great weekend. I will super look forward to seeing you on Monday for our next walk through Sauder Village together, checking out all these beautiful rugs, gathering ideas and inspiration for our future projects, right? I can't wait. It'll be great. Have a great weekend. You know where to find me. I put in a couple new products out myself. I didn't realize that this was not out as a kit. I am so sorry about that. I haven't blocked mine yet, so it's curling. It's curled up under my table. I just put this out as a kit, the Trick or Treat tapestry. So I'm sorry about that. I had like 2 people ask me in an hour, and I thought, why is it so hard to find? Well, because it's not there, right? Classic Deanna, it's not there. So that's there, and then I put out the I put it way over there. I put out a set of the Halloween yarns, the 3-ply yarns that you can add for bling in whatever way you want to bling it this autumn. So those 2 products are out there, and I am going to post the Design Like Grandma Moses class. So if you're interested in that type of folk art and designing your own hooked rugs, please look for those things over the weekend. I will see you all on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody. Gail, oh, thank you so much. Lots of ideas for me, too. I'm super ramped up right now. I can't imagine why.